Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Welcome to another update that's preceding our roundup here in October.
It's live, so it's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Update news is very interesting when you're live, especially when you're used to pre-recording, huh? Uh-huh. Well, we got a couple of announcements.
Okay.
Roundup is going good.
Tagging along.
I hear Mason doesn't want to be on live tonight, but he's smiling. But he might have to be because we'll probably need to go over that stuff and explain it to people again. Because
I would recommend it. I thought you did an outstanding job.
See, Mason? He's talking to you, honey, not me.
Yeah.
You too.
No, he put all the information together,
Well, I know.
but
that was hard.
we were explaining what our goal is and the transition that we've been talking about a little bit. And one of our goals is to keep the Galaxy 19. It's actually very important that we can do that. So anyway, we'll talk about that during the roundup tonight.
It's very good, too.
I know for certain that, well, I say that, Lord willing, the creek don't rise, they say in West Texas and New Mexico. Gary Bird will be on with us again tonight. I'm really enjoying him.
Oh, yes.
And Savannah Miner, who I always enjoy too, is supposed to be here, but right now she's babysitting one of her grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
So when Papa comes home, she can leave. That's how that works. We have been every day this week mailing out those roundup gifts.
Mm-hmm.
From last year.
Thank you. I think everybody knows that. But we're starting to get calls back from people now.
All right.
That they're receiving them.
Uh-huh.
And
they're happy.
They're very happy
Well, good.
that they have finally received something. So anyway, but I am still packaging. In fact, I was packaging this afternoon. They're still duplicating. And you just can't imagine the amount of stuff.
Right.
And to make sure that everybody's got it.
The right stuff.
The right stuff. So, well, you got a letter, Dan.
I do, and it comes from out of... from a lady over north of El Paso. To my beloved family at GLC, I thank God every day for many moments throughout it and the 24 hours He blesses each of us with. That you are committed to the truth, and you bring into my
and our
life. I think of how grounded you are, even though people show up and try to make us move, but they go away. We don't have to, because we know who our master is. Amen. Be blessed. Love you, from Carla Sue, Donna Ana, New Mexico. Great letter.
I remember getting a letter from her 3 years ago.
Really?
Yes, sir. Because she saw the dangers of what was being taught.
Mm-hmm.
She did, didn't
Yes,
she?
she did. And so
That's
thank
where
you,
we're at.
Carla Sue.
Well, that's why that letter means so much. What she just said is that...
That's right. She said she was concerned
Yeah.
because of what was being taught, but they went away.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're being very, very cautious now, I can assure you. It's a scary thing. Do you have a devotion?
I don't, but you have a video, do you not?
I do have a video from Doron Kedar over in Israel. He's calling this his Israel update. So
Okay.
it goes kind of good with, it's Israel update news.
Uh-huh.
There you are. So we're going to
Amen.
go that. It's just at 5 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Doan Kedal reporting to you from the land of Israel, and right now where I'm standing is just outside the Gaza border. Right behind me is the Gaza Strip, and this is pretty much as close as I can get without getting a bullet to the head from one of the terrorists on the Gaza Strip. And what I wanted to talk about this morning is actually what's been happening lately in Israel, and one of the saddest realities is how in this last celebration that we've had, which should be one of the most celebrated, most joyous occasions in the Jewish year. You know, we have different holidays, different feasts, but the Feast of Tabernacles in specific is a feast where we're basically commanded by God to increase in joy, to have a joyous celebration. So during this feast of joy, there's actually been, unfortunately, a dampering or a bringing down of that joy by the Muslim occupation of the Temple Mount. On my last report, I was talking about how the Palestinians and Arab Israelis who have entered the Temple Mount and have barricaded themselves on the Al-Aqsa or in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and what they did is they basically create a riot and a protest to the festival of joy that Israel was having. So as we're trying to celebrate and enjoy ourselves, and the very last day, even on Wednesday, we had over 20,000 Jewish worshipers who came to the Western Wall to have the final day of celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles and having this mass gathering. And you know what's interesting? You never heard about this. There's not one article, there's not one news story, not in Israel or internationally, that has covered this very exciting event. Can you imagine 20,000 people gathering for something specific, and it not being violent, it not being something that is creating a stir in the world? And that's really what's happening here in the land of Israel, is we're going on with life as usual, and trying to manage our lives in the context of the continual hatred around us with our neighbors here on the Gaza Strip who are shooting rockets at us in the south, or with the Arabs up in East Jerusalem, which is, I'm using that loosely, of course, that's actually biblical Jerusalem, but in East Jerusalem, throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails. And of course, you probably did not hear about the 2 border policemen who were burnt to death by these Molotov cocktails that were thrown at their posts, because they're forbidden to engage these terrorists, they're terrorists, to engage them because of the politics that be. So this is what's happening, and unfortunately here's another year where we should be celebrating, we should be worshiping on the Temple Mount and enjoying the ascending, the going up, the aliyah that we're commanded to in the Torah as Jews by God. And instead, the Muslims are coming and creating a riot and barricading themselves and basically ruining the feast. They're ruining the joy, and no one is raising an eyebrow about it in the world. You don't hear the newspapers in the United States or in Europe, if it be the Daily Journal, or if it be the Washington Post or the New York Times, none of them are describing this insanity that's taken place on the Temple Mount. In fact, here's what we have heard. We have heard about how Kerry declared that because of ISIS, that the peace talks have failed. Really? So because of a war, an Islamic war that's taking place in Syria and Iraq, and where they're trying to occupy and take over the world, that the peace talks have failed here in the Middle East? It has nothing to do with the failure of the United States or government and its foreign policy. Not at all. See, that's what's happening in the world. And just a brushing off of responsibility, a brushing off of the reality of what's happening on the ground. And I hope that I've been able to give you this morning just a little bit of what's been happening on the ground, and giving you the news behind the news, and that you get an idea of what's taken place in the last few weeks here. So this is Doan Kedal reporting to you from the land of Israel. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Shalom.
Oh, that's so good. And what he said is every morning I get up, I tune into Jerusalem Post. I do it. It's just like brushing your teeth to me. And not a word that he said has been on the news. I had not even seen that on the Jerusalem Post. That's what's so disgusting.
They have a thing going on over there right now. There's been so much violence there since those 3 teenage boys were murdered, kidnapped and murdered.
That's right.
And I'm not saying it's Jewish violence. It's Palestinian youths mostly are creating a continual...
They're calling it a silent intifada.
A silent intifada.
And they have done that every day, too, that part, you know.
It's on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
But some of that
We have an article about it today.
Do you?
Yeah,
Good.
because something tragic happened today. That's not our first article. Our first article is actually good news, especially for Texans. But, you know, anybody with any kind of fears, because they will be able to come here if they need to. This article comes from Newsmax. The Dallas hospital that handled the first fatal case of the Ebola virus reported in the U.S. and later had 2 of the nurses who treated that patient contract the virus will no longer treat Ebola patients. Texas GOP Governor Rick Perry announced that 2 new hospital biocontainment centers will be designated as treatment centers for Ebola.
Wow.
The Methodist Health System in Dallas, which will dedicate an entire floor to Ebola treatment and be backed up by Parkland Hospital and University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center staff, and the UT Medical Branch in Galveston. Both staffs will be equipped and trained to handle any further cases of Ebola which might arise, the Hill reported.
That's marvelous.
Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital came under heavy criticism when it first misdiagnosed Liberian Thomas Eric Duncan, who later was quarantined and died from Ebola. 2 nurses from the hospital contracted the disease and currently are under treatment. Exactly how the nurses became infected is under investigation, but in a hospital letter, hospital administrators said staff made mistakes in handling this very difficult challenge, partly because training and education programs had not been fully deployed before the virus struck, NBC News reported.
Some 116 healthcare workers at Texas Health Presbyterian still are being monitored for signs of Ebola, although only 3 had actual contact with any of the 3 patients. And to date, no new infections have emerged. The monitoring will conclude November 7th if no new cases are found. Governor Perry said that Texas Presbyterian has been on the front line. They have paid a heavy price. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins noted that the health staff at Texas Presbyterian are our hometown healthcare heroes. They are tired. It would be inhumane if they were forced into continuing, the Scoop reported.
Perry said of the new plan, in the event of another diagnosis, the newly designated hospitals will allow us to act quickly to limit the virus's reach and give patients the care they need in an environment where healthcare workers are especially trained and equipped to deal with the unique requirements of this disease, the Hill reported.
Dr. Stephen Mansfield, president and CEO of the Methodist Health System, told the Hill, the reality is there remains a threat, and as long as it's there, Methodist is obligated by our mission to improve and save lives through compassionate quality health care, to do all we can to help. The Methodist Hospital, which has 10 empty beds and rooms for staff to suit up and remove protective clothing, could take in 2 new Ebola patients within a day, Dr. Sam Bakke, Chief Medical Officer, told The Hill, adding, this is a fully contained facility just like Nebraska and Emory.
Boy, that's good news.
That is good news.
You know, you want to take off and salute that governor of ours.
Yes.
He's done more than this czar that we have.
Yeah.
Well, actually, some of the things that have happened that the federal government has done, happened actually a couple of weeks after Governor Perry announced his task force on this, 2 to 3 weeks.
My goodness. Thank you.
Well, the article that Amy mentioned as we opened about the terror in Jerusalem, a baby was murdered in a Jerusalem terror attack, and this is reported by INN and AP, and a tragic story. A Palestinian with a history of terrorism, or as mainstream media calls it, anti-Israeli violence, slammed his car into a crowded train station in Jerusalem on Wednesday, killing the 3-month-old baby girl and wounding 8 people in what police called a terror attack. The driver rammed his car into the pedestrian crosswalk near Ammunition Hill light train stop, located near the national headquarters of Israel's police force.
Police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said the driver got out of the car and tried to flee before he was shot by a police officer. He did not die. He said footage captured by security cameras indicated the driver deliberately struck people waiting at the rail stop. The footage posted on Ynet news site showed the car turning out of moving traffic and heading straight into the station, accelerating while plowing through several rows of pedestrians, mowing down one of them.
The 3-month-old girl died from her wounds after being rushed to Hadassah Medical Center on Mount Scopus. Shimon Helperin, the infant's grandfather, told Arut Sheva that the Zizo family, which had been waiting for a child for years, had been returning from prayers at the Western Wall, the Kotel, when they were struck by the terrorist. Helperin and his wife had arrived in Israel specifically to meet their grandchild on Wednesday and was forced to go immediately to the hospital instead.
The 21-year-old Arab driver, Abdur Rahman Sloti, has been confirmed as a resident of the Silwan neighborhood and a member of, you guessed it, Hamas. He had previously served time in Israeli prison for terrorist activities. According to Walla News, Sloti's father is the brother-in-law of one former head of the Al-Qassam Brigades, Hamas's military wing. It's reported that he physically confronted the police who entered Sloti's family home to gather evidence and confiscate terror materials.
A Hamas spokesman openly welcomed news of the terror attack in Jerusalem by one of its members. Hamas spokesman Hossam Badran stated on official Hamas television, quote, "This is a natural response to the crimes of the occupation and invasion of our land by the Jews, particularly on the Al-Aqsa Mosque," he said, referring to the Temple Mount. In remarks made to the government press office during the security briefing on the attack, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu specifically blamed Arab leadership for the attack. This is how Abu Mazen's partners in government act. The same Abu Mazen, Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, who only a few days ago incited toward a terrorist attack in Jerusalem, the Prime Minister said.
The attack occurred just hours after Jerusalem Police District Commander Moshe Adri announced a comprehensive plan for a new task force to battle the cycle of ongoing violence in Jerusalem, which has been named the Silent Intifada. Special surveillance was ordered to be set up around the Jerusalem light rail, which has been an ongoing flashpoint for violence over the past several weeks. Train passengers have reported Palestinian youths attacking the carriages with rocks and other violence on a near daily basis.
Jerusalem has experienced months of violence, which erupted following the kidnap and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers in June by a pair of Hamas operatives. In a letter written to Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier this month, Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat sought action against the riots in Jerusalem, where Arab attacks on Jews have become daily occurrences. Barkat said he had seen a video shot recently by residents of one community showing them being attacked brazenly by Arab youths who appeared to control the streets and who were hurling rocks at the residents' homes.
So, in essence, that's what Doron was referring to in his report.
Right.
The ongoing violence.
Right.
And no, we're not seeing that anywhere. No one's reporting on it. And trust me, if they were, Mom and I'd be picking up on it. We would be seeing it.
That's right.
That, and Dad watches the news, and Jenny in the bookstore watches for news too. So, no, it hasn't been being reported.
Well, the world's waking up to what's getting ready to happen after this thing in Canada today.
Yeah.
You know?
A uniformed soldier
Was killed.
and an officer were murdered today. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
At Parliament.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
near Parliament.
That's right.
Well, the whole Canadian
Well, you
forces
know,
on it.
we've had questions about in letters why we're not having Waleed Shabbat or Avi Lipkin on anymore. The primary purpose of having them on was to alert our viewers of what terrorists are all about and that they really do exist. And so our viewers are very educated about that. That all happened years ago when you guys started hosting them. Well, I think everybody's kind of figuring it out now.
Finally.
Yeah, because it's
But
everywhere.
They really need to stay on top of it, too.
You know, Dad was asking last night if there's any other news besides what ISIS is doing. And, you know, it's so,
Because that's all we hear about, that and Ebola.
yeah, that and Ebola. Well, they're huge.
They
There
are
are huge things happening. I want to get on to this next article because
It tells
it's
some of
actually about, this is our only article on the Islamic State. It comes from ICEJ News. The Islamic State terror militia and Al-Qaeda affiliates were on the march in several Middle East and North African countries this week, with large battles in Iraq and Syria, which diverted attention from smaller but still deadly fights in Libya, Yemen, Egypt, and Lebanon. In Syria, the fight in and around the Kurdish enclave of Kobani continued to be the focus of U.S.-led airstrikes as IS fighters continued to converge on the area, even as Turkey relented and allowed Iraqi Kurdish reinforcements to enter the city from its territory.
But a growing campaign of car bombings in Baghdad has many analysts worried that IS, the Islamic State, has plenty of military power it can still deploy in its campaign to topple the status quo in the Middle East and resurrect the ancient Islamic Caliphate in the region. Nevertheless, U.S. officials have expressed hope that along with airdrops of supplies to the besieged fighters defending Kobani, the fresh Peshmerga troops will allow Kobani to fight off the attack by IS and inflict tremendous damage on its ability to continue the battle.
However, Turkish reluctance to aid the Kurdish forces, which include elements which it has fought a decades-long insurgency against, has slowed down Allied efforts against the Islamic State. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told reporters on Monday, "We understand fully the fundamentals of Ankara's opposition and ours to any kind of terrorist group, and particularly, obviously, the challenges they face with respect to the PKK. However, we cannot take our eye off the prize here. It would be irresponsible of us, as well as morally very difficult, to turn our back on a community fighting ISIL. It is a crisis moment, an emergency where we clearly do not want to see Kobani become a horrible example of the unwillingness of people to help those who are fighting ISIS."
In Libya, the besieged and barely relevant elected parliament has turned in desperation to an alliance with Khalifa Haftar, a warlord who used to be a general in the army of deposed and deceased dictator Muammar Gaddafi. With the regular armed forces of Libya almost entirely disbanded and impotent, and completely Islamic militias in control of large swaths of the country, the Western-backed elected parliament has little choice but to make common cause with one of the only armed groups which has not pledged its destruction and the establishment of an Islamic empire in Libya that is allied with the Islamic State.
Civil war also continues to tear apart the desert country of Yemen in the southwest corner of the Arabian Peninsula, sitting astride the strategic Gulf of Aden. Yemen contains what the CIA considers the most dangerous al-Qaeda franchise, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP. State control by the theoretical central government in Sana'a has virtually disappeared in most of the country, with various factions, criminal gangs, and militias battling each other for control of resources, towns and roads in different parts of the country. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is a very important article from Ynet News. Should the Palestinians petition for a full membership at the United Nations is how the member states are likely to vote. The permanent states are the United States will object. Russia will most likely support in order to embarrass the U.S. and force them to veto. China, too, will likely support for the same reasons. Britain has yet to decide, but after its parliament recently voted in a symbolic move to recognize a Palestinian state, it's likely that Britain will remain on the fence until the very last moment. France has yet to decide.
As for the non-permanent states, Chile and Lithuania are leaning toward support. Jordan and Chad will support the decision. Nigeria has yet to decide. The new non-permanent states, New Zealand, Spain, and Angola, have yet to decide. Venezuela and Malaysia will support the decision.
The Council has 15 members, 5 of them permanent and 10 of them are non-permanent. In order to pass a resolution, a 9-vote majority is required. Even if the resolution passes, each of the permanent members has the right to veto the decision. It is Israel's hope that the United States will veto.
Amen to that.
That was actually a very educational article about permanent and non-permanent. And the 5 permanents, any one of them can veto any decision that's made.
Mahmoud Abbas is determined he is going to have a Palestinian state declared by the UN. And it's totally illegal, but he's going to keep pushing.
Well, we have one good news article. Comes from the ICEJ. An applied physics PhD candidate from Israel recently won the $100,000 Singapore Challenge 2014 at the Global Young Scientist Summit in Singapore. Yossi Kabesi won the award for his project using genetically engineered bacteria to track the quality of municipal water systems. We're working on an interesting project with the Ministry of Defense, aiming to map buried land mines using this bacterial biosensor. Kabasi explained if you spread the bacteria on a minefield, they will sense explosives, and an airborne vehicle will detect the optical signal they produce.
Wow.
He added that the method was easily adaptable to measuring pollution in water supplies and that he would be using the prize money to further research in order to benefit populations and governments worldwide.
Wow.
Now, see, this is what we've been talking about. That is what, as human beings, God expects of us.
That's right.
To make a difference in the world. Okay.
And so
Save the
your
world.
news is that way each day. Thank you, too.
Don't forget to join us in 30 minutes. Live roundup tonight.
See you then.